So, good morning, good evening, and good night. Let me share my screen. Give me a second. I don't know what is happening here. Sorry. I'm not able to disconnect this. Can you see me? Hello?
We see you, yes.
Okay.
Not your screen if you're sharing a screen. We don't see that.
Okay, yeah, I'm going there. There you are. So, here it is. On the Zoom. Yeah. But I don't see my.
I think you might have to be made a co-host in order to share your screen.
Yeah, I don't see my document here.
Dave, will you make Alejandra a co-host, please? Or Artie needs to. Artie's the host now.
Yep, done.
Okay, so let me go again. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. There you are. So, good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Alejandra Chacón, and this is our 13 hour of the 2026 Spring Equinox Connectathon. Our question for this hour is, does cultural diversity can help us to navigate polarities in the AI era? But to start, I would like to acknowledge that today I am on the land of the Lituot and Squamish nations territories in Whistler, Canada, where the past, present, and future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people come together. This is the order of this session. We will go to the introductions, and the guests that will lead this conversation will share. We will share our perspectives, and then we will open the floor to questions and answers. So, the introductions. Aitana, Amezcua, Chacón. I think everybody here heard our introductions previously, or not. I don't want to repeat myself, but okay. If not, I will say it. Aitana Amezcua Chacón is a third-year undergrad student at the University of Toronto, where she is double majoring in history and ancient Middle Eastern civilizations, with a focus on law, historical memory, and the relationship between legal systems and social justice. She holds a certificate program from University of Oxford focused on written between 1914 and 1945. She was born in Mexico City, but she was raised in Canada. Her academic work explores how legal institutions, historical narratives, and cultural memory shape collective identities and public understanding of the past. Aitana has gained experience in academic and applied research, working with the Memory and Tolerance Museum, Mexico City, and she's working with Marina Demchenko in an internship, so working in the Soul of the City project and this Connectathon. So Aitana, welcome, and thank you very much for being here today. Now I will pass.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. My pleasure. And by the way, Aitana, she's my daughter. And now I will pass the floor to Aitana. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm here as we said, as a third-year university student from U of T, and I'll be sharing a little bit on my perspective of how we can survive this AI era through multiculturalism and diversity. From my understanding, my contribution will be done a little bit more towards the end. But thank you for having me.
Thank you, Aitana. Well, so this is our question. Does cultural diversity can help us to navigate polarities in the AI era? To answer that question or work around that question, I would like to give you context about my thoughts on this regard. I have been working in a preliminary research on this this new and complex environment where we are living, that it's the AI era. And when I started my studies as a law student, I saw how in the world in the 90s, democracy started to, gain more places and resources to live within our communities. And I saw that in my home country, Mexico. And we thought naively that it will be there, forever. But now, with the beginning of the new century, this started to change in Mexico. It has been very challenging for the community, for the whole country. But it's not just Mexico, it's across the world. So, and we have very representative examples in each continent. So, in the case of Latin America, it's something that it's affecting the whole region. So it's an existential threat. So when I developed this research, obviously, I found multiple local elements to happen that in each place because it's a complex problem for each country. But I also found a common factor that it's social media. So I went to find what is happening there, right? So I found that in the beginning, we have been said that social media could connect friends and build like-minded communities, give voice to diverse groups, increase the capacity of business, democratize education, help us to find any kind of products across the world and getting funding. And this happened and is happening through social media and internet platforms. And that was true, and it's true. But the consequence of that was that a new economy emerged, the attention economy, that produced an exponential engagement, which consequence was an exponential global economic growth, data processing, and digital interaction. But with that attention economy, a new market arrived that competed for our attention as users. So they needed a new kind of technology, more powerful, and that could reduce the failure in terms of connecting with the users. So this digital environment started to include in their algorithms AI and generative AI, where everything evolved. So in the beginning, social media used to create our decisions when we interact with in these environments. But it was based on our decisions navigating internet and social media. But then it needed to compete. So it evolved to a new kind of industry that it's called the persuasive technology. It's guided by persuasive technology. that helped make this more efficient, go faster, escalate resources, increase the GDP and wealth. But the mechanisms were different because, as we will see more detailedly soon, it was based on not just curating our behavior, but finding some vulnerabilities in the users to engage them and keep them attracted to these environments. And it brought a kind of collateral damage that it's something that I call the addiction economy, that produced impact at human, social, political, and environmental level, at least. This is in my preliminary research. So I found impact in things like losing critical thinking capacity, reducing our attention spans, loss of the control of our thoughts and decision-making capacity, misinformation, cell phone addiction. And then we also have, in terms of, our connection with community, we can see how biases, assumptions are in these environments easily. Discrimination, hate culture, social fabric erosion, isolation are some of the effects in this social fabric, but also if we translate that in the political arena, we find polarization, radicalization, and in many cases, the breakdown of democracies, as we saw in US, Mexico, Brazil, Myanmar, and many other countries. So this is affecting the geopolitical distribution of power across the planet. So it's very relevant, right? And when we talk about the impact on environment, it's also huge. It's one of the most important elements producing the climate change. So why is working in this way? And we have to distinguish between AI in general and persuasive technology. Okay, but persuasive technology use a kind of AI era, just to differentiate that and keeping in mind. But at the end, inside the attention economy and the addiction economy, there is a business model, and this business model was created to reach one purpose, that it was designed for profits. People's benefits are not in the formula. So the algorithms has been designed to offer content, products, and services based on people preferences, vulnerability, extreme fake and inflammatory content, based and promoting biases and promotion of inequity. And we have huge examples right now in any given day, right? When we read the news. So, and when we think this in terms of human capacity, we can see how a persuasive technology took our discussion fields or environments from children to elections, impacting our dialogue, considering that the dialogue has a metaphoric function in our processes as humans, and also affecting our democratic dialogue, as we have seen during the last decade. So attention economy affects our, it's increasing the complexity of the world, because there is a big new environment that it's impacting the problems that we used to have before. And then our capacity to respond, the verticality between our capacity to respond to that complexity is increasing, because all these impacts that we have in terms of attention spans, our capacity to decide if we are delegating our decisions to these platforms, and so on and so forth. So there there is something that we have to attend that, and in that regard, right? So what is happening across the world? Well, we have passive reactions, ignoring, refusing, or refusing to accept the consequences, or sometimes people just accept the consequences. In some places, there's education and awareness that it's very important. Some countries are working on regulating that. Canada, Europe, China, in different ways. Sometimes compromising human rights, sometimes no, sometimes is the actions are not enough. And then we have, intellectuals and civil society thinking what we can do, right? So I want to share you the one idea that I found in Yuval Noah Harari. This guy has been writing and talking a lot about this issue. And he talks about the need of we as humans to come back and connect with our internal world. To navigate this complexity that it's affecting us in our individual, social, and ecosystemic levels. So from there, I would like to pass the microphone to Aitana to think these questions and come back to our original question. How can we navigate this from culture and connect these questions that Aitana will talk about with the sense of this connectathon, that it's a finding in culture and in the relational dimension of our existence as communities and humans, a possible pathway to explore. I don't know where we will arrive, but a possible pathway to explore and find things, because we heard in our 7-hour talking with 2 Mexicans that are in the front line working with communities, that art, music, culture is bringing hope. So from there, Aitana, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we carry on, I want to do a brief interruption and just give a little bit of the background of Alejandra. She is a Mexican lawyer and a Lacanian psychoanalyst with a strong commitment to social justice. She's participated in Mexico's integration into international agreements and promoting inclusive policies for refugees and indigenous people, and designing peace-building strategies in the state of Chiapas during an armed conflict, and has also advised the Mexican Bank Association on finding strategies to address the national economic crisis in 1995. As a psychoanalyst, she has worked with children at the Mexican National Psychiatric Children's Hospital and at a boys' orphanage. She has also worked for more than 20 years helping them face fears, anxieties, and resistance, and advising them to find a purpose in life. She holds a master's degree in global leadership, and she has been an associate faculty in the Bachelor's of Business Administration in Innovation and Sustainability at Royal Roads University, where she's currently a doctoral degree student. She also founded Regenerative Futures Consulting Corp, a Canadian organization focused on strengthening human capacities and empowering individuals through communities as agents of change to address global crises such as climate change through a systemic and transgenerational perspective. Now, finally, she started a doctoral degree program in social science, where her research is building human capacities to promote planetary health, as we see. So, just before I carried on with my perspective, I wanted to take the moment to acknowledge all of her expertise that she holds, that has led her to give such wonderful insight. Now, going to the second part, I want to begin by being very honest about the moment that we are in a society. Because when we talk about the AI era, we're not just talking about technology, as shared before. We're talking about a time where social polarities are becoming sharper, more visible, and harder to navigate. We see this in controversies of all types. We see this around controversies around race, debates about LGBTQ rights, and we see a growing visibility of young men moving towards the more right wing or reactionary spaces online. And AI doesn't exist outside of these tensions, it interacts with them. In many cases, actually, it amplifies them because algorithms, as mentioned, are designed to capture attention. And what captures attention is often what is emotionally charged, what is divisive, and what confirms what we already believe. So over time, people are just not forming opinions. They're being immersed in environments that reinforce those opinions continuously. And this is where I think the question of storytelling becomes incredibly important. Because in many ways, AI is shaping the stories which we see and the stories which we don't see. But those stories are often fragmented. It'll be a short video, a post, a headline that we don't read more into. And what gets lost in there is the complexity and the humanity. I've seen this be contrasted very clearly in my own work. When I was working at the Museum of Memory and Tolerance in Mexico City, part of my role involved supporting research and also helping with projects connected to themes of memory, violence, and human rights. And what struck me was how different it feels to encounter a full story, a lived experience, compared to encountering a simplified narrative online. For example, in interviews, testimonies, people don't speak in binaries. They don't present themselves as entirely right or entirely wrong. There are contradictions, there are emotions, and there are silences. And engaging with that kind of storytelling forces you to slow down, to listen, and to sit with discomfort. And I think that this is something that we're very sadly losing in this algorithm driven spaces because those spaces reward speed, they reward clarity and strong positions. But storytelling and real storytelling creates spaces for complexity. And in this AI era, this is something that we especially have to hold space for. At the same time, I think we need to ask, where are young people today forming their identities? Both in my academic experience and my personal experience, I would say increasingly it happens within digital spaces, but also in moments where those digital narratives interact with real world environments. For example, um, special at university, especially studying history and working with topics like law and memory and social justice, I've been exposed to multiple perspectives in the same issue. In the classroom, you can read one interpretation of an event and then immediately encounter another one that challenges it. And that experience is very different from algorithmic spaces because instead of being reinforced, your thinking needs to stabilize in a very productive way. I think this is incredibly important for identity formation. Another example is the interviews that I've been involved in, whether it was at my time at the museum or now working with Soul of the City, is when projects are connected to social work. When you sit across from someone and hear their story directly, there's a level of accountability. You can't scroll past it and you have to engage with it. And that kind of encounters shape how you see yourself in relation to others. So I think the question becomes, what kind of spaces and activities can young people build identities that are not based on polarization, but on understanding? I think there are a few that really matter. First, as kind of mentioned before, spaces of storytelling and listening. And not just consuming stories, but actively engaging with them, whether this be as something as exhibitions, oral projects, interviews, or guided discussions. Because young people encounter stories that are complex and human, and it becomes harder to reduce in these stories to stereotypes. Second, it's spaces of co-creation. And this is something that I think I've seen both in personal and academic contexts. When people are involved in creating knowledge, whether that's creating a project, conducting research, or participating in conversations, they begin to see themselves as part of the narrative, not just as consumers, which is a very key point that is driven in this consumer economy, but you begin to see yourself as a contributor. And that creates a stronger and more reflective sense of identity. And third is spaces that allow for uncertainty. And I think this is something that we don't talk about enough, actually, because many young people today feel pressured to have a very clear and very hard and defined position, especially online. But identity is not always clear. And I think one of the most valuable things that spaces such as universities have given is, and have given me, is the ability to sit with that is uncertain and to question, rethink, and maybe change your position. And we need more spaces that allow for that. I think this is particularly important when we talk about young men moving more towards right-wing spaces, because often what those spaces provide is not just ideology, but they provide a sense of belonging, of clarity and identity. And if an alternative space doesn't offer that, if they only offer critique without connection, then the polarization will continue. So the challenge is not only to oppose those narratives, but to create spaces where young people, but all people, can explore identity in ways that are relational, they're reflective, and they're not just based on opposition. And this brings us back to cultural diversity, because it's not that cultural diversity helps us navigate polarity simply by just existing, you know? I think it helps when it's activated through storytelling, through encounters, and through shared spaces, because diversity introduces multiple perspectives, but it is through engagement and that those perspectives can become meaningful. So to come back to the original question, does cultural diversity help us navigate polarities in the AI era? I would say yes, but only if we connect it to practice, to storytelling that restores the depth, to spaces that create real encounters, and to forms of engagement that go beyond the algorithm. Because navigating polarities is not about eliminating the difference, but it's about learning how to remain in relationships across it, while still holding on to our values and our responsibilities towards one another. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Tana. Thank you very much. So having said that, the floor is open for a beautiful conversation with you guys. So please jump in. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Aitana, you build hope in the future with what you do. Thank you so much, really. I think
Thank you.
it's not just the fluency with which you've sort of woven this entire narrative, but it's also the fluency of how these thoughts are emerging. And that can only happen if you embody it. So this is just so important to preserve the sanctity of the next generation today. And by sort of diving deeper into the history, you're carving out the potential of what the future fabric should look like, and that is just so important for us to rally behind, right? So thank you. It's just so much to take in, and I'd love to connect with you at a later time as well, and sort of have a little sharing going on there, because I also work a lot with young people and on trauma. Kids who've been caught in terrorism, kids who've been in prison, and things like that. So I see a lot of convergence happening. I'd love to connect with you at a later time.
Thank you. Yes, for sure. I would love to.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and second the previous speaker. I'm so glad I made it up for this session. Super interesting. I'm really interested in the research. I'd also love to connect. Maybe Artie and I can connect with you guys later. It's very relevant for the project. Well, one of the projects we're working on with the Kamuni, and this notion of creating a pro-social space online that really encourages people to engage locally and engage with each other. So it's touching on all these different areas, but I don't want to hijack the conversation to talk about that. But I'm something I've observed in particular among my younger friends is this tendency to, swipe to, because you don't want to stick around if something, you don't want to have an awkward discussion, you don't want to have, it's just so easy to swipe. And then I'm thinking a lot of that is, come from that practice of swiping, and not there's no tenacity, there's no need to stick around, there's always something else to be doing. I think you touched upon that. And I'm interested, but what has emerged for you in people that have like broken that habit, that stop swiping and start sticking around. Do you have any experience of that? And yeah, I'd love to understand the mechanisms behind changing that behavior.
I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm also a victim of it. My friends even that sometimes get annoyed at the fact of how quickly I'm able to swipe. It's something that my sister also does. I think it's something that is our attention spans nowadays are very short, and I think it's not only with the idea of scrolling, but it's also with headlines. We see a headline, see it, it's the main thing, and then you don't click the article to actually read what's happening, and then you get this misconstrued idea of like, oh well, I saw this big fact and that's it. I think it goes back to, I don't have the answer to it, but something that I've noticed is that we've lost and slowly are losing the art of consuming books. I think that there is a beauty in not, it doesn't have to be a physical book. I personally enjoy more physical books, but we've lost the art of sticking to a storyline that expands past a statement. And I think with a younger generation, the work doesn't start when you're a teenager. It doesn't start when you get a phone, but it starts at the very early moment where you sit down and you start to learn how to read. I was actually reading an article about this, that we have a problem with literacy. There's a problem in the U.S. in which kids that are graduating have never actually read a book from cover to cover. And they were asking why. There is this thing of swiping, and maybe it's the education system, but what is it? And something that they saw was that kids from a very early age are not getting taught how to read out loud. They're not getting taught how to use phonetics. And when they're forced to read out loud in school, but without having that background, by the time they get to first, second grade, then they're very insecure about it. And they'll say, well, I just don't like reading. Instead of, no one has actually taught me how to interact with these texts. Very often they read a sentence and they can read it, but they can't digest it. So there's this idea that, oh, I don't like reading, so I can only do these short things, but it's not like, actually, we need to teach that. We need to bring it back to, okay, no, let's go past the sentence once again, 2 times, 3 times, till you actually are able to digest it. With me growing up with my mom, something that we did was every day at night, we would read Harry Potter together. And she would read a page and I would read a page. And we did that for the 7 books. I love reading, and everyone that knows me knows how much I love these movies, but truly is because it was a moment of connection with my mom. She had a busy day. I had gymnastics, school, all of this. But every single day she would sit down with me, and that was something that we didn't sacrifice. No matter how tired she was, and if at some point she was telling me that spiders were talking to Cinderella because she was so tired of having the 2 kids and all of this, I was like, wait, Mom, that's not happening. But it's a beautiful moment and things that I can remember. And now when I interact with things, then it doesn't feel as challenging to read all of these texts or to stay a little longer because you were taught how to do it in a safe environment. Same with my sister. When she was learning how to read, my mom would sit down with her and would read out a paragraph and then would be like, okay, Isa, now explain what this was. And it was like, well, I don't know. Let's say the last sentence. And it was like, no. Let's read through it again and we'll take it slowly. And when you have those safe spaces, then it evolves. It's a community thing. It takes a village. And so then we see the phenomenon, I think, in the scrolling of the phone. But it's not, that's a symptom of it. The root of it is we go back, we have communities, and we have to help kids interact with these and not just demonize of, oh, well, it's because you scrolled too quickly, or, oh, it's the phone, or it's this. It's okay, no. How can we as a community sit with each other, whether it be teachers, friends, parents, families, however these connections go, how can we sit together and interact with this? And how can we build a safe space that allows everyone to approach these texts, videos, movies from different perspectives and actually have a connection out of it is what I would say.
Thank you, Aitana. I would like to add on this issue of that you mentioned about the amplifying effect that has persuasive technology over another more structural problem, if I may. And it is connected with the concept of the addiction economy, because it's not just the phone, but it's the way that fast food is working. It's about many other addictive things that we have in our environment. So we have to work on knowing that this is the symptom of an addictive environment where we have different products to feed these addictions, right? So in this, I would like to connect with a question that Arti asked before in her intervention about how to navigate with the problems of escalating this energy industry. And I think all of these things are connected to building human capacity, but from a different perspective. So it's about creating the spaces where people could recognize them as important, as valuable for the community, and build common stories and create this social fabric where you have a place where you are important, where you are connected emotionally with others. And in that way, we can create these new or these different spaces where the symptom is not the main thing. You know, you are working in the roots of or the causes of the symptom, that there's something in our social fabric that is broken, and we have to work on that. So when Aitana was talking about the safe spaces, it's about creating the circles like we are doing right now here, from different parts of the world, holding the space. So it's from there, and giving their place to the young, women, you know, vulnerable communities, and so yeah, this is my project, my doctoral project right now, how to build that environments where we can work not just at intellectual level, but at heart, meaning emotional and spiritual, to act. So yeah, that's my point of view. Okay, so anyone else want to jump in?
I'd like to. First, I'd like to make a couple comments and then ask you a question, Altana. First of all, thank you for being from Mexico City. My father was actually born in Mexico City. I only visited it for the first time in 2022. It would have been my father's 100th birthday, so I thought I would go visit it. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous place, a great city, with what is it, Chapultepec Park? It's gigantic, you know, with the museums there. It's just gorgeous. So many beautiful things there. And I was just so enchanted with the way you presented yourself. And by the way, you know, you may be too young to realize this, but we used to blame Al Gore for inventing the internet. Do you remember that? Well, it must be true, because it's all, you said it's all based on algorithms. So there you go. There you go. It's all Al's fault. No, seriously. I loved what you said about storytelling. I think it's absolutely right on. Storytelling does allow for ambiguity. Storytelling does allow for interpretation. Storytelling always goes way beyond what is on the surface, and it's multi-layered, infinitely layered. So good stories, just the reason why they work to be told over and over again is because people are not experiencing them exactly the same way each time. They're getting more and more out of it, you know. So that probably is the way out. But my question for you is, I think your question was, does cultural diversity help us navigate the AI world? Was that the question?
It was kind of more framed as, can cultural
Okay.
diversity help us navigate the AI era? So
AI
as a
era.
society,
Okay. Same thing
in
for
the
me,
era of
almost in a
AI.
way. So what I want to ask you is, do you believe that the AI era is absolutely just going to increase, or is there some opportunity to for people to move through this era and get back to original deep storytelling?
I think I th I fundamentally think that AI is here to stay for a long time at least. So I think we have to learn how to live with that. But I don't think that that means the storytelling has to go away. And I actually have a very interesting example that I lived through with this. When I was working back in the Museum of Memory and Tolerance in Mexico, we were doing a project associated with the Shoal Foundation in the US, where they found where they realized a fundamental problem that we have nowadays, and that is that most of the survivors of the Holocaust have passed away or will pass away very soon. Hopefully, the ones that are still here will stay with us for a long time, but we have very few survivors left to share their stories. So, what they did was that they interviewed a great amount of survivors within the US, and they interviewed them for weeks and months at a time. They asked them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. So, what they then did is that now, in association with this, you can have, let's put it as an example, the one that we worked with, the woman who story we worked with, her name is Eva, a Polish survivor who now lives in Argentina and loves literature. So with this program, what you can do as an individual is that you ask her a question. For example, what's your favorite food? But it can go on to much more intense topics. One of the ones that I remember was, did you have nightmares at Auschwitz? What did the camp smell like? Could you shower? How did you survive? The one that stuck with me a lot was being able to ask through AI, but and it was a video of her. So it's not like a platform like chat or whatever that you would type in a question and then the algorithm learns the question and brings in more information. This is all based on her interviews. And sometimes the question that you have, she wouldn't have an answer to. So she would say something like, this is a great question for the historian, or sorry, could you not hear you? Could you repeat it? Or could you rephrase it? So what it gives is that it gives genuine interactions. Every single time the answer could be different, depending on how you framed it. She may answer differently. Sometimes you would get very familiar with the program, so you would have to start to hear the same narratives. But it gives you the closest human interaction to this in a form of storytelling through AI. And it lets us keep their narratives in their own voices, which is what I love the most, because it wasn't just reading a text, but it was uh, Eva answering you, and she would tell you things of how she dreamed about bread and how till this day, her being almost 100 years old, she still has dreams about bread and what the bread would symbolize to her, and it's AI, but it's also her. So I think we need to, without holding on to what it was before, is, well, this is the situation that we have. What problems do we have, and how can we incorporate them to then bring storytelling and to bring all of these things that will give cultural memory to generations that would have never been able to hear her voice, people that would have never been able to hear her voice. So I think that that's one of the ways that we can tackle this changing reality.
Hmm. I have some follow-up questions, but if other people want to go, I'll wait. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. So no, this is bang on because yeah, you're right. AI is not going to go away. But I mean, I'm just going back to the session we had before this that I was discussing about the energy system. So we don't have enough energy systems to support the kind of AI that's becoming. So what does one do? Right. So that's one of the fundamental questions. So I'm just thinking that I'm almost becoming like a skeptic now that yes, I believe that AI is here to stay. And I was telling Dave, a few minutes ago that I'm a big fan of human augmentation. Is in our current capacities, we're not able to process the kind of information we are expected to process and sort of turn out. So these are becoming codependent. So why I'm becoming a skeptic is I think we have an equal amount of need to become participative with AI, yet have the space to be in connection with the non-AI systems as well. Yeah, or let's say the more indigenous, the more human system. So this is something that I'm throwing out there for everybody to consider because we are at a stage where we don't know. I mean, energy literally is one of the biggest crises right now. And even if this conflict subsides, it's going to take at least a year and a half before we bounce back and things start getting normalized. So when you want data centers to run that kind of capacity for you, it's either the groundwater that's going out or, well, the data center is not going to function because there's no water. So these are like sort of codependent challenges. And yeah, we've got to really, be resilient and also be very open-minded about the future going left or right or a mix. You spoke about solar punk, yes. I'm calling something, the next stage of solar punk is green punk. Yeah. So where we're greening everything and we're greening energy, we're greening ecosystems, we're greening ourselves, we're greening the earth again, we're greening our thoughts. So yeah, we're heading into something that I love calling green punk. And finally, AI is not giving me the right kind of graphic for it. It's just not able to give me the correct illustration, despite like 100 iterations to it. So here we are. Yeah. But thank you for sort of weaving this together.
Yeah, thank you very much, Artie. I would like to jump in this part because, yes, we are in this chaotic environment right now across the world in terms of energy. And at this very moment, it's quite difficult to find the kind of solutions for complex problems. We have to solve the immediate problems that we have right now in front of us in each country, depending on the kind of limitations that we have in terms of energy. But said that, also we have to create the capacity and in our communities to understand that we are in a chaotic environment and that we have to move to complex situations. And it will take a village to do that. We have to transform our linear way of thinking to understand the complexity of the systems we have in front of us. And it will not be easy. We don't have the resources. We have limited time, but it's a place where we can build solutions. And I think that we have to transform education from this linear and siloed perspective of knowledge to something that could be connected with the emotional and spiritual part of our human existence that brings, again, storytelling, art, all these spaces that open the meaning to something that it's not right or wrong, but multiple perspective of a complex world, So we have to move the discussion to that space because it's the nature of reality that we have. And help people to understand that this linear issue works for several things, but not to address the most challenging problems that we have in front of us. So I think the problem that we have around the world is that this kind of knowledge, you need to study a master or maybe a college course to get that knowledge. And we have to create the spaces to give this information in secondary levels, in middle education, as we used to do with the technical knowledge of I don't know, electricity. Or in Mexico, we used to have these technical schools where students learned something that I don't know the name in English, Aitana, oficios.
Vocational education.
Okay, yeah. So transforming, I think we have to create this kind of programs where people can understand fast the world where they are living, this complexity in a massive way, I think so. So yes, because changing the minds can change the system from the bottom of it. It's not just a policy. It's not just a law. It's about the structure. It's the mental models. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Isabella, please.
I just want to say, as well as your insights have both been so like beautifully in depth, and I've really enjoyed it. But I was just wondering, I think this definitely ties into this. What do you think, especially as AI becomes so much more prevalent in society and in people's day-to-day lives? What do you think the impact of its role in forming people's actual identities will have on society long term?
I'll speak on it very, very quickly, but I think Alejandra, especially as working as a psychoanalyst, will have a very interesting take on this. But I think we already see it. I think with the elections happening not only in the U.S. but all over the world, we've seen the role that AI and social media has taken and the huge investments that there has been by both sides of government in the U.S. By different political parties, that it's having not only from the identity of the right wing or more, what people would call woke ideologies that are already polarizing people, but we see it all the way to the governmental level and presidential elections. I mean, in Mexico, we've had crisis with the Green Party of them misusing the time where they could pay influencers to tell people how to vote. There's a limit on when you have to stop. And they went out there and did not care that the loss is one thing and paid influencers and it happened to be a crisis, but not a crisis that followed through. We saw the same thing with Mark Zuckerberg and Congress in the US, Elon Musk. So we see the role that it's taking, and it's taking from the smallest bits of society, from everyday interactions to major policy making that impacts every single person in the globe, impacts species, impacts environmental policies. So I think we'll see it everywhere.
Yes.
May I come in again?
Please.
Oh, thank you. At the risk of being a curmudgeonly older person, I just, and I don't normally identify in that way at all, but it seems to me that the biggest problems we have in the world are fragmented thinking, which has caused a fragmented society. And you spoke about it earlier where you're talking about how the algorithms set up reinforcing fragmentation. I think that's very true. But, what bothers me about AI, and it's why I asked you whether you thought it would be around for anybody here, if they think, and it seems like everybody agrees absolutely it's going to be around. I'm concerned about that because, I'm married to a Japanese woman. I lived in Japan for 3.5 years. And I know that what happened with the creation of the atomic bomb, which has been there my entire life, was an instance of science running ahead of wisdom. So I have had students at California Institute of Integral Studies, and I've asked them about artificial intelligence. I've had dialogues, and I've asked them, is it possible to top load wisdom into your designing of artificial intelligence systems? Because if we don't, we're screwed, because what happens is inertia runs amok, and there are inventions, and you have this information that's not grounded in any kind of wisdom. It's not grounded in any kind of perennial knowledge of what really works. We just get so focused on the new. This is the newest thing. But the newest thing, as somebody in our dialogue circles once pointed out in 2002, the new is always being touted, but the only thing that really works, that's tried and true, proven, is the old wisdom. So I'm very concerned about this trend, because I don't see any collective effort to really slow down or stop, pause to evaluate what is really going on. In fact, I see quite the opposite. So there's tons of money being thrown at artificial intelligence. And I don't know. I guess I don't use it except when I'm doing Google, and then it's embedded. So I'm using it without knowing I'm using it, but I just don't see it being very effective. And I'm concerned. But one more thing, and then I'll just
We
I'll
have
stop.
1 minute left, Glenn. We just have, if you want
sorry.
to respond.
There are people that are working with artificial intelligence to try to build in a spiritual component. They're trying to do that. What do you think of that? Anybody here? Is that possible?
No, for me, it's no way. I think that's the treasure that we have as humans, that machines cannot build, and it's connected with our moms and our families, and love, and hugs, and and breathing, and yeah. So no, no for me. I hope I am right. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here with us in this conversation. Lovely to continue this conversation soon. And my pleasure. Thank you, Aitana. It was fantastic. Thank you.
No, thank you all for attending. I had a blast, and handing it off to the next meeting. And please, anyone, if you're able to stick around, there's still going to be so much more wisdom being shared.
Wonderful.